everybody. In this lecture, we are going to be talking about phonemic awareness and phonics. First, you should know the difference between phonics and phonemic awareness. So, phonological awareness is made up of a group of skills, some of which include being able to identify words that rhyme, counting the number of syllables in a word or a name, recognizing alliteration, that's when words start with the same sound at the beginning, segmenting a sentence into words and identifying the syllables in a word. And phonemic awareness is even more detailed than that. It's the ability to notice, think about, and work with the individual sounds in a spoken word. So being able to identify each individual sound in a word. And so phonemic awareness, you should know that our speech is composed of a series of individual sounds, and that phonemes are the smallest unit of sound and are written as graphemes. So we talked about that last time, how letter sounds are called phonemes and the symbols are called graphemes. And children gain an understanding of phonemes by manipulating spoken language in the following ways. So identifying sounds, categorizing the sounds in words, substituting sounds, blending sounds, and segmenting sounds. This diagram shows the interrelationship between phonemic awareness and phonics, and it's a leveled progression of skills. And when you are working with preschool-aged children, the things that you focus on are different than the things you focus on with kindergarten, first, second, or third grade. So in preschool, you might be focusing on rhyming and alliteration, things like onset and rhyme, that's knowing, being able to hear the beginning sound in a word and what follows. You might also focus on sentence segmenting, so knowing where one word stops and ends. And then as children progress along this continuum, they start to identify syllables in words. There's onset and rhyme. And please notice that rhyme is not spelled incorrectly. That is a different word completely from words that sound alike. Rhyme represents every part of the word following the first consonant. And then phonemic awareness, that is being able to put it all together. So you should probably also know some of the most important or useful rules of phonics. And when you are teaching reading and writing, it's important to have a good grasp of these rules. There's a great chart in your textbook on page 121 that talks about the useful rules of phonics. So recognizing the two sounds of C and G, and knowing what CVC patterns are. So that's consonant, vowel, consonant. And then being able to identify how final E changes the sound of a word in CV patterns. So consonant, vowel, then E. Understanding what a CV pattern is, that's when a vowel follows a consonant in a one-syllable word, and the vowel becomes long with the exception of the, to, and do. And R-controlled words are when vowels that are followed by an R are overpowered and are neither short nor long, and the one exception is the word fire. Of course, IGH and how IGH changes the sound of a word, with the exception of the word neighbor. And then the KN and WR rule, and that's when words begin with KN or WR, the first letter is silence. Those are some tricky rules for kids to learn, or people who are learning English as their second or third language. Understanding these rules make reading and writing simpler. And here are some phonics strategies that will support emergent readers and writers. When you're looking at a word, sound it out one syllable at a time. And sound out any word that can be sounded out phonetically. And so our English language is wonky. Not all of our words can be sounded out phonetically, but for the ones that can, it is a good strategy to just break the word down by syllable and then sound out each part. The next strategy is decode by analogy, and that's the use of phonograms. And in your classroom, instead of using the word phonograms, you'll probably use the phrase word family. So if children can recognize the word block, likely they can then sound out the word clock or sock. But words that end the same, and then all they have to do is decode the first sounds in the word. That's also part of onset and rhyme. If they can figure out the first sound and they already have a grasp of word families and know maybe it's like box or fox, they can usually figure out or decode by analogy. And then the next strategy is applying phonics rules. So go back to the slide before, and those are the most common rules of phonics, but also giving children the chance to use their background knowledge of known words, and practicing also the use of teaching high frequency words so that children are not sounding out the most common words in the English language. There are some common assessments of phonological awareness, and you will likely get the most practice and the most use of DIBELS, which is the Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. But some of the other assessments include the OS, which is the Observation Survey of Early Literacy Achievement, and the TILE test. This is where you as a teacher get to have some fun with teaching phonemic awareness. I loved phonemic awareness activities. I'm not one for like direct or explicit instruction. It's not my style. But when we're teaching reading and writing, you have to teach these skills explicitly and directly, but you can turn them into fun games. And so you can make sound matching activities, sound isolation activities, sound blending, sound addition and subtraction, sound segmenting. Any chance that you get to turn one of these activities into a game, it's going to connect for children and it's going to be fun and not feel so you are filling an empty vessel with information. Instead, it will be an engaging activity where children are making meaning of the sounds of words, and it can actually be really fun and engaging. The textbook has some great examples of activities that support phonemic awareness, so be sure that you really do read this chapter and the chapter on spelling really, really well. These are two critical chapters in this textbook that will give you background knowledge on instruction around reading and writing. Some common assessments of phonemic awareness. Again, the DIBELS. I think every school district and every school that I have ever worked at has used the DIBELS. It's a common assessment nationwide. It helps us identify children's reading levels and how to scaffold and differentiate instruction. Then there's the PALS, which is the Phonological Awareness Literacy Screening, the TPA, which is a test of phonological awareness, and the Yopper-Singer test of phonemic segmentation. And that looks specifically at whether or not children can break or chunk words out by syllable. All right, so you are going to be working with children prenatal through grade 3. You are going to be likely teaching a broad spectrum of ability. And I like to tell students, if you are teaching kindergarten, you can anticipate that you are going to have children who are developmentally 18 months old all the way to developmentally 8 years old. And so that's a big spectrum to teach to. And so this slide says when children struggle, but just face it, you are going to be teaching children across a broad spectrum of ability. But you can support children's phonemic awareness by increasing opportunities in these areas. If children are having a hard time blending or segmenting, go back to their listening skills. Can children identify environmental sounds? And one of my favorite activities that I used to do when I was a toddler teacher, believe it or not, I recorded about 5 or 6 different children singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And then we played it back for them. And we had the children identify, and these were older toddlers, they were 2.5 and older, but we had them then identify which child they thought was singing. And while it was a fun and exciting game for them, it gave us a lot of insight into their listening ability. But you can do the same thing with older children as well. I also really enjoy playing sound bingo. You can find fun sound bingo games at different teacher stores or on Amazon for relatively inexpensive, or you can make your own and just record different environmental sounds. So a car honking its horn, somebody blowing a whistle, that type of thing, just so children get used to listening to environmental sounds so that they're distinguishing a variety of sounds. And then practicing alliteration. Alliteration is when words or a series of words begin with the same sound, not the same letter necessarily, because we know that C and K often make the same sound, but recognizing when words start the same. And then rhyming. And please know, I put this in parentheses because it's so important. This may be one of the most important concepts for preschool aged children to learn in terms of literacy skills development. If children enter kindergarten or first grade not able to rhyme, their likelihood of being successful readers by third grade extremely diminishes. And so you have this great opportunity to play rhyming games and alliteration games that are going to build children's listening skills, that's going to build children's ability to recognize when words sound the same. And then when they get to that step of decoding words, like we talked about earlier in the lecture, this will not seem like such a challenging task because they will have some background knowledge around how words sound. And then teaching concepts of word. So, can children identify individual words in speech? And this is where, if you've ever tried to learn a second language or a third language, it is incredibly hard to know when one word starts and where it stops because everything just blurs together. So, if you can practice finger plays and rhymes, when you read books, use the big books when you're reading aloud so that you can point to individual words so children can follow along. And then practice syllables. Children can segment words. Can they segment words by the number of syllables? And I used to play this game, higgity piggity bumblebee, can you clap this word for me? And so I'd say, higgity piggity bumblebee, can you clap this word for me? Watermelon. And then we would clap watermelon. And it's just a fun way to one, assess how children are segmenting words by syllable, but also if they are hearing the different parts in words. All right, so here I'm going to probably spend the most time on this slide, recognizing the difference between phonics and phonemic awareness. So this is important to know. It's just skills as a teacher that you really need to understand when you're teaching the process of reading and writing, and knowing the progression of phonological awareness and how it leads to phonemic awareness. So sometimes phonemic awareness is confused with phonics. They are two different yet interrelated skills. Phonemic awareness refers to spoken language and the understanding that the sounds of a spoken word work together to, or the sounds in one word work together to make an entire word. And then phonics refers to alphabetical principle, or that idea that letters represent the sounds in spoken language. And then children who cannot hear and work with the phonemes of spoken words will have a difficult time learning how to relate those phonemes to letters when they see them in written words. So this is where you have the opportunity to build a lot of background knowledge. And yes, it takes a lot of upfront work and a lot of explicit direct instruction. But the more that you kind of backfill these skills for children, by the time that they get to third grade, hopefully they will be fluent and proficient readers because they have been practicing these skills since maybe even the time they were in childcare in a toddler program. And so it's important that we start practicing things like segmentation, onset and rhyme, blending, and all of those fun word activities and games that you can play with young children. You can start as early as as 2.5 or even 2 years old. So we are going to pause here. When we come back, we will be talking about spelling.